We acknowledge those of the Shawnee, Miami, Erie, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Haudenosaunee Confederacy, whose lands we stand on, and the thousands of Native Americans representing over 100 tribes who currently live in Northeast Ohio today. Thank you to the Lake Erie Native American Council for providing us the information to develop this acknowledgement. We also want to take a moment to lift up CAC's value of equity. We lead with racial equity in our work because the creation and perpetuation of racial inequalities is embedded into government and grant making. We confront the white supremacy that resides in our work because racial inequities across all indicators of success are deep and pervasive. We also recognize the power and potential that organizations who produce arts and cultural programming have as bearers of culture. These institutions have the power to write the narrative about who belongs and who is valued. We encourage arts organizations to connect with resources to advance equity in your own work, and you can visit cacgrants.org/equity or contact our team to learn more. So CAC has a board of 5 individuals appointed by the county executive and a staff of 7. This slide introduces the grant making team, and in particular, I'll introduce myself, Julia and Devon. We are the grant managers and the grant managers. We each have a portfolio of about 100 organizations that we work with through the grant cycle, and one of us is your grant manager. If you're not sure who your grant manager is, we have a PDF that lists it out, and we can share that with you at the end of the presentation. Your grant manager is here to help. We can help you find materials you need, such as maybe old applications or reports, offer guidance around completing requirements, and we will surely be sending you reminders throughout the year and can also help make connections between organizations. Also joining us on this call is Laura, our communications manager, and Jake Sinatra, our director of grant making, strategy, and communications. And now I will turn it over to Devon.
Thank you, Maya, and hello, everybody. So for today's workshop, we'll get started with the grantee instructions, followed by sharing who CAC is and what we do. We'll talk about your 2025 CAC project support grant and the requirements for the grantees. And of course, we'll leave space at the end for today's workshop for questions. I also want to note that today's presentation is being recorded, and we'll be sharing the presentation and recording with you in a follow-up email, which will include the resources we share with you today. So we've held some time here for introductions from you all. There are about 50 people in the room with us right now. So not everyone needs to introduce themselves, but it would be great to hear from maybe 5 to 10 of you so that we can learn a little bit about who's receiving a grant this year. Please feel free to come off mute. You can introduce yourself, your organization, and the CAC funded project that you'll be doing this year. You can also introduce yourself as well in the chat. Would anyone like to volunteer first?
Sure, I can go. I'm Shannon Scott Miller. I work with an agency called Fostering Hope. We provide art groups to kids who are in residential care. This may be an alternative to foster care for them. They may be there for mental health reasons, and they may be there as a diversion program. And so we partner with 5 different agencies to offer 10 different groups a week.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hi, I'll go next. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
You're good.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is O.C. May Neal, and I'm the president and CEO for Spread the Love Foundation. We are a music industry workforce development program, and we currently operate our program, which is named Interest to Income at the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Detention Center, as well as working with community court involved youth, so probation youth, and we do after school programming for CMHA residents. We are using our CAC grant to continue our You Must Learn programming, which we through You Must Learn, we have different speakers that come in. We host panel discussions as it relates to hip hop culture, careers in arts and entertainment, as well as one of our first events that we're actually hosting for 2025, thanks to the CAC, is we are bringing in New York Times bestselling author Omar Tyree, who is considered the godfather of urban fiction. And so we're partnering with Cleveland Public Library, and that event will be held July 21st. So we're super excited. But besides that, we had 3 more to plan, so you guys stay tuned. But it's nice to meet and see everyone on the call today. So spread the love, look for us. And we are also the beneficiary for the Martin Luther King Day celebration for the Cavs on Monday. So if you're going to the game, grab the product so we can get some money. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, OC.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Chaya Swami. Hello. I met you all in the in last year. I'm a member of the board of the directors for AVO, which is Association of Asian Indian Women Organization. We are a support group for the single women displaced from homes, victims of domestic violence. And as such, the children of those affected are also affected in many ways. And we do a function for us children, especially on Children's Day, where we encourage our children from all from all the groups, from the neighborhood in Parma, from all over Cuyahoga and other counties to participate and engage and know about the cultures of the other cultures. And in the process, we have also been aware of a need for the children with multiple disabilities like autism, etc. So special needs children is our goal, and we would like to support more of their activities and encourage their coming up. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, China.
Hey everyone, my name is Jelani. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the interims program director at Colors Plus Youth Center, who I'm representing for today, along with Missy. And yeah, we do a lot for LGBTQ youth. In Northeast Ohio, we do programming from family dinners and game nights, team game nights, our Connections Plus, which is our like social drop-in space, where they can make friends, do some art, make connections. And for the CAC grant, that helped fund our drag tutorials, where we have local drag queens and kings come and kind of teach the youth the art of drag, the history, how to make your costume, the makeup, and really help them express themselves and learn a new skill, where they can perform at a drag brunch at the end. And also, it helped fund our drag story hour, where again we have our local queens and kings and in-betweens come help out and read stories for our little kids and families. Both have been very awesome and have new people joining and new families coming every time. So thanks again and happy to be here.
Thank you, Jelani. So we'll take about 1 to 2 more groups, and then we'll continue with the presentation. Would anyone else like to introduce themselves?
I'll go next.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Rachel Schindler. My pronouns are she, her. I am the president of the Euclid Symphony Orchestra, and 2 of our other board members are here as well today. We are a local community orchestra that's been around for 65 years in Euclid, open to anyone who wants to join us, and our programming is open to the public. This year, the grant is going to be going towards our gospel concert, and that is featuring Black composers and artists.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hi, y'all. I am Chaz Hawks, the Director of Operations for House of Transcendent. Bree Morgan is also on the call. We are a nonprofit and we have a couple of different programs, but the CAC will go towards our Outreach program, and we'll be having a fashion show that also acts as a financial literacy workshop and a health workshop. So super excited and super thankful for the grant.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chaz. And thank you everyone who came off their mics to introduce themselves. It's always interesting to hear all of the types and places of arts and cultural programming across Cuyahoga County. And thank you again for sharing everything about your organizations and your projects this year. So now it's time for us to share a little bit more about Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. So first, CAC is the public funder for arts and culture in Cuyahoga County and has invested more than $257 million in more than 500 organizations since 2006. Cuyahoga County residents created Cuyahoga Arts and Culture in 2006 when they approved a tax on cigarettes to support arts and culture in our community. This levy was just renewed in 2024 and now runs through 2035. In 2025, CAC is investing almost $10.8 million through grants to 300 organizations who bring art and culture to life in our community. Our mission is to inspire and strengthen the community by investing in arts and culture. And to do that, we make grants to 501c3 arts and culture organizations and projects in Cuyahoga County. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Julia to introduce the Project Support Grant Program.
Great, thank you. So we're going to get into it here about the 2025 Project Support Program overview. So the purpose of CAC's Project Support Grant is to promote public access and encourage the breadth of arts and cultural programming in our community by supporting Cuyahoga County-based projects. Of course, you all already applied and needed to learn this, but this is relevant because as we get into the planning and implementation of your project, it's important to understand what our definition of an eligible project is so that you can keep up with that. So a project is a connected set of activities with a beginning and end sometime between January 1st and December 31st of 2025, taking place within Cuyahoga County. A project must have explicit goals or objectives and a predetermined budget that does not equal the organization's total annual budget. So CAC will not pay, the project can't be all of your organization's work in the given year. Projects could be one-time events, such as a festival or an exhibit, or a connected series of events, such as a roster of classes or a series of productions. Projects must be arts or cultural. CAC's definition of arts and culture comes from the Ohio Revised Code and is defined as including but not limited to literature, theater, music, dance, ballet, painting, sculpture, photography, motion pictures, architecture, archaeology, history, natural history, or the natural sciences. Projects must have a public programming component. This one is especially important to note. For example, if you were approved for a grant to support your mural project that includes a public event, and you cancel the public event, the project will no longer be eligible for funding. Public programming also does not mean that those events must be free. Lots of our programs that receive grants do charge ticket fees. The key is that there's a publicly advertised event for residents to engage with your project. So like I said, everyone has applied and been approved, and the materials that you submitted are what were approved by our board based on these requirements. And so if you execute your plan as defined in that application or project form, you will be in good shape. There are a few organizations who had minor issues in their forms. For example, the project dates weren't specific, they extended the whole year, or there were budget items that didn't add up exactly. We pushed those things through anyway, but your grant manager will plan to be in touch early this year to clean up those items, just so we make sure that we have all of the accurate information we need to make sure you guys have a successful grant year. We will make room for questions at the end of the whole presentation, but I just want to pause briefly for a second and see if there's any questions about this topic in particular. What counts as a project? And you can put it in the chat or come off mute. I'm just going to pause 1 second here. Okay. We can move on to the next slide. So this slide shows some details about funding restrictions. A few common project expenses that CAC grants can't be used for are receptions, international travel, and activities outside of Cuyahoga County. Some common expenses that are eligible to be covered by your CAC grant include admin costs and logistics, so permits, rentals, staff management time, etc., or any expenses that help support the production or implementation of the arts and culture content. For example, you may need a permit in order to produce your event, so that would be an eligible expense. An example of something that may happen at your project but is not really related to arts and culture or helping support it would be like a bounce house, for example. Let's say you're having a street festival and there's going to be a bounce house. So a bounce house is not required in order to help make sure the arts and culture part of your project happens, and so this wouldn't be an eligible expense for CAC to cover. We aim to be pretty expansive and allow indirect costs to be included in your budget. A complete list of funding restrictions can be found on page 13 of the 2025 project support guidelines, which we will share with you. Oh, I think Maya just dropped it in. So please take a look at that. It's on page 13 in there as you're budgeting for your project, and you can reach out to your grant manager if you have any questions or concerns. Something I'll say too is just that guidelines document is the roadmap for this grant program. So most of the content we're covering in this workshop is available in that document as well. So it's a helpful tool to have on hand. So matching funds. Project support grants are matching grants. This program requires a one-to-one match of additional income from other sources. So sources of your matching funds can include foundation grants or government grants, private donations, ticket sales, member dues. Matching funds cannot include other funds from CAC. For example, CAC co-funded grants from Neighborhood Connections. For grants over $5,000, that match must be cash. So things like grants, donations, ticket revenue. For grants under $5,000, up to half of that match can be in-kind support. So volunteer hours, donated space, that type of thing. Your project expenses must be at least double the amount of your CAC grant. So if you have a grant for $4,000, then your expenses must be $8,000. And you can have up to $2,000 of that be in kind. Again, I'll pause here to see if there's any questions in particular about the matching grant requirement or the expense requirement. It's kind of complicated to think of it narratively, so I'll give it a second here.
So I have a question. So
Yeah.
if we are partnering with another organizations such as Cleveland Public Library, and they are helping us to meet the expense, especially if we're planning to do a reception and blah, 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 and they're paying for that and have at least half of the expenses for the event, does that count as matching?
Yes, that can go towards your full organization's budget. Something like a reception, though, can't be covered by the CAC part that's covering up to half of your project. So it's fine to include those in-kind dollars or in-kind, the dollar value of any in-kind in your complete budget, as long as that complete budget is at least double your CAC grant and you have enough eligible expenses to meet that, assume it's like a $4,000 grant to show that you have enough eligible expenses for that amount.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
We do the Children's Day, which is an annual event with the participation of the children from all different regions, but it is projecting the Indian art and dance form. And there are teachers who demonstrate and give a workshop about the whole project because many people are interested in music and art and culture. And there is other important aspect is the food which is provided, which is a Indian delicacy, like they have to know what is this food, what is this kind of, is that covered, or it should be included in a ticketed thing? Yeah.
So CAC's funds, one of the things that we're not able to pay for is food. So
Yeah.
again, that's okay if that's a part of your project. It just can't be covered by your CAC grant. So you'll have secured a match, and the match can help to cover those types of expenses. Again, we have a list of those specific things. There's probably 5 or 7 things, including, reception or food, travel outside the county, et cetera, that are just things that CAC is not able to pay for in the guidelines there. I do see a question in here. Remind us again of the possible in-kind options. In-kind donations would be anything where you're receiving a donated item or service, and you'll assign a dollar value to it. So if you're getting tables and chairs donated from a rental agency to support your project, that can be in kind. If you receive space for free through an organization or business that's donating it, that would be in kind. Volunteer hours are also in kind. There is a standard hourly rate that volunteer hours are equal to. I think you find that on the independentsector.com or something along those lines to see what the actual value of in-kind volunteer hours is. There's lots of things that could be counted as in-kind, but those are some examples. If you have more questions about this, we will have space for them at the end, but for now, I am going to turn it over to Laura, who's going to talk about crediting requirements.
Thanks, Julia. So all CAC grantees are required to acknowledge CAC funding in their publicly funded arts and culture project. By sharing with audiences that your project was funded by the residents of Cuyahoga County through CAC, you're showing what public funding for the arts can do in real time. Your publicity for your grant is an important advocacy tool to help champion public funding. So you can do this in many ways, such as in your programs or website, a pre-show announcement, in your marketing emails, or on venue or exhibit signage. Our new communications toolkit can be found on our website and is linked at the end of this presentation. And here you can find CAC's logo, our suite of ads and social media graphics, and a number of other tools to help you fulfill this requirement. All grant recipients are also required to post your public programming events on clevelandartsevents.com, and many of you have already done this as well. A public programming component is required to receive grant funding and project support. Posting to clevelandartsevents.com is your public notice to CAC that your event is happening and has an added benefit of reaching the residents of Cuyahoga County. This site is a managed events calendar of arts and culture events happening in the greater Cleveland area. It's visited by thousands of Cuyahoga County residents each month and is a great opportunity to reach a wider audience. By posting your events on this community calendar, you are not only meeting the terms of your grant agreement, but you are demonstrating public benefit and connecting with county residents. All CAC grantees have an organization page created for them, but feel free to reach out to me if you need help with your account. Your project must be posted to the calendar at least 30 days in advance. And CAC also pulls from the calendar for our bi-monthly e-news, events newsletter, social posts, and media partnerships. So that's an extra benefit of using this resource. More information on how to meet these 2 requirements can be found in the communications toolkit, which again will be linked at the end of the slides. And now I will hand it back to Maya to review final reports.
Thank you so much, Laura. Now we are going to, go into the final reports, which is required to receive your grant payment. CAC grants are reimbursement grants. Funds are not automatically distributed at the start of the project. They are sent after the final report is submitted and approved. That said, grantees are able to request up to 60% of their grant as an advanced payment. Grantees must have matching funds for the portion being requested and must have their event posted on CAE.com before requesting advance payment. If your project is starting soon or has already started, you can complete an advance payment request form. They are currently available. And requests can take up to 2 weeks to process and receive payment, so please keep that in mind when you are making your request. Final reports are available for review and completion. We suggest organizations look at this report ahead of your project so you can know what information to collect and record throughout the project. So for example, the location report, keeping track of where your programming is taking place in the county. You should also keep track of your budget. There is an income and expense table included in your final report, and this is where you will show what was actually spent. And we will discuss this in more detail on the next slide. The final report is due no later than 30 days after your submitted project end date. Your report and all support materials must be completed and submitted online. And PS grantees who are receiving grants of $5,000 or less have the option of participating in our virtual report out in lieu of a full written report. Grantees who select this option will complete an abbreviated final report and attend a report out session where you, along with other project support grantees, will share about how your project went in a small group setting. Upon review and approval of the final report, the remaining grant funds will be released. Plan ahead to meet the reporting requirements by tracking information related to your project. And as I mentioned, the location of your project, the number of artists and volunteers and audience members that were engaged, and then also making sure that you're documenting the project and taking pictures. The publicity materials are helpful to have, and a sample of how you credited Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. Okay. So this is an example of the income and expense table that you will see in your final report. This step must be completed whether you are completing the full final report or if you're completing the report out. On the left, we have the income table, which will show what money was raised to complete the project. Project support grants are matching grants, so your income should be at least twice the amount of your grant award. The first row is for your CAC grant amount, and the other income sources might include donations, other foundational support, ticket sales, and then also in kind can be listed here as well. If your total grant award is for $5,000 or less, you can include any in-kind support in your income and expense table. This might include volunteer support, donated materials, donated venue, as Julia had mentioned earlier. You should put the numeric value in the income amount column. And I think Julia also put in a link, but volunteer hour rates can be found on the 13th page of our guidelines. The current estimated value in Ohio is $31.18. On the right is the expense table. CAC grants can only account for half of any project expenses. So total expense should equal at least twice your grant amount. For example, if your grant award is $5,000, your total expenses should be at least $10,000. Under expense source, you should list what expenses you had for this project specifically. In this example, we have listed artist fees, venue, marketing, and again, the in-kind should be listed under income as well as the expense. The second column is where you will list the full expense amount. You will see that automatically totaling at the bottom under total expenses. And then in the third column reads, did you spend your CAC grant on this? Here you will check the boxes only of the items you spent your CAC grant on. Please review CAC grant funding restrictions on page 13 of your guidelines. It is fine to list restricted items such as food for a reception, but you should not have this selected for what you spent your CAC grant dollars on. And keep in mind your total grant amount. You should have at least enough eligible expenses selected to equal at minimum your CAC grant. Please also note that when entering numbers into the income and expense amount columns, to not add any commas or any other symbols. It will not total the amount of your grant or how much you've spent, and you will receive an error message. And that comes up a lot, so I'm just going to reiterate it again when you're entering in the numeric values to make sure that you're not putting in the commas, which I know doesn't feel intuitive, but it comes up with error messages and it messes up the table for you. So just keep that in mind if you are receiving an error message to go back and take a look at that. Let's see. On. Okay, so some final miscellaneous items related to your project. The first is regarding changes to your project. The project outlined in your application was recommended by our panel and approved for funding by CAC's board. Funds from CAC may only be used to carry out that project. That said, CAC understands that parts of your project may change during your planning process. Any changes to a project must be written and submitted to your program manager for approval ahead of time. This might be things like the schedule or timing of your project, the budget, the scope of the public programming component, the arts and culture content. Connecting with your grant manager ahead of time ensures that there aren't any surprises at the year end that might disqualify your project from receiving funding. We are here to help, so please come to us with any questions or proposed changes. And lastly, as a reminder about the panel comments, only organizations that went through the panel this year will have panel comments. About half organizations this year opted, or not, a little under half, opted to bypass the application and panel review by completing the same project as your previous year project. And so you will not have panel comments this year. When you were notified that your grant was approved by our board, you were also provided with comments by our panelists. These comments are a great tool to see how your application tied to our funding criteria and for feedback from a diverse pool of arts and cultural experts. We encourage you to look at the panel comments as you plan for your 2025 project or around your next application. Panel comments can be found on CAC's website. And if you have any follow-up questions regarding the panel comments, please feel free to schedule time with your grant manager. Okay, that brings us to the end of our presentation. So thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to answer any questions you have about anything we've shared today. I know we had some great questions throughout the presentation, but I'm going to pause now. Also, just noting as you guys are thinking of your questions, that the final slide is going to include a list of links that we have mentioned throughout this presentation, and the presentation was recorded, so you will receive the recording of this presentation as well as this slide deck tomorrow in a follow-up email. And again, we, as your grant managers, are all here and happy to talk with you and talk through any questions or concerns you might have as you're putting together your projects for this year. With that, I will pause and see if there are any questions coming up for anyone or anything in the chat.
I have one question, Maya. The Children's Day was celebrated with a lot of children with arts and music, dance, different types of dance teachers were there. You know, there are different categories of dance, like ballet and other things, just like that Indian dance. So the venue was the library, and they were kind enough to, and there was a timing because it's on a weekend, it's a very crowded event. So we can select another venue, but it should be accessible for all other children, and is a need kind of a transport expense provided in case there are children coming from other counties.
Is that like an eligible expense, transportation?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
what you're asking? It can be an eligible expense. Yeah, so I can follow up with you, but expense for travel within the county to your project is an eligible expense. Yes.
Especially a group of children, like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya.
No problem. Any other questions?
There's one in the chat here. When will new organizations be able to apply?
New organizations, so we will have a workshop similar to this for new grant opportunities in the spring, and usually around the springtime is when you should start looking out for our application process to begin, so usually around May.
And if you aren't already, we have a newsletter sign up on our website where you can make sure that you will receive notifications. I'm going to find that and drop it in the chat right now.
Thanks, Julia. Any other questions about reporting or this grant cycle? Tracking information, eligible expenses. I will emphasize the importance of staying in contact with your grant manager as changes come up. The example that Julia gave of if you have a mural as your project, but then you decide not to do the public programming component, if you check with us ahead and we can give you that reminder, that might help to give some direction to how to move forward with your project to make sure that you stay in compliance with being able to receive the grant. I've also had situations where a venue falls through and then they select another venue, but it's outside of Cuyahoga County and they just weren't thinking through that and didn't notify us ahead of time, and we're not able to, support any work outside of the county. So just making sure that you are staying in contact with us as changes come up throughout the year is really helpful to make sure that we can help guide you through different changes.
Something, oh,
yeah, go ahead, Julia.
yeah, something else I'll mention is, Laura talked about Cleveland Arts Events as a location that we ask and require grantees to post their events on. You are also welcome to put other arts and cultural events and programs on that site, whether CAC is funding them or not. It's a great tool for you to help get your programming in front of a broad audience. And we look at it all the time. So, the grants managers love to get out and show up at people's programs and events. And that's where I typically look to scan what's happening in the next few weeks to see how I can plan my time. Like Maya said, we each have about 100 grantees, so we're not able to accept every single invitation to a program, but we really love to see those on there and hear about them from you. So yes, staying in touch and posting your events is really helpful for all of us.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Yeah, you're never bugging us. If you send an email and let us know that your project is coming up and there are something that you would love us to attend. Again, we can't attend everything, but it is helpful. And we do try to go to as many things as we can. So always great to meet you guys in real life and participate in the wonderful programming that's happening in our community. How can we find our grants manager? There's a link to that, but maybe we'll just drop it as well. There's a PDF list. I don't know if anyone has it handy. Thank you so much, Laura. Laura just dropped a link, so if you click on that, it'll show a list of the organizations and who your grant manager is, and so you can contact us directly. Great. Well, it seems like we answered all the questions you could possibly have. And so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for attending. We really, really appreciate this. Again, all in support of you guys having really fantastic projects and grant years this year. So excited to participate and see all the wonderful things coming out. And if you have questions, again, feel free to follow up with us. Thank you guys.